Bom, pessoal, então acho que vamos começar então. Bom dia a todos, obrigado pela presença de vocês. Então essa é mais uma apresentação da série de seminários que acontece todas as quartas-feiras, às 12h45, de vez em quando sim, de vez em quando não, né? E, então hoje a gente vai ter a apresentação do professor Jean-Marc. Eu vou convidar o professor Nicolai então para fazer a apresentação do professor Jean-Marc, e aí acho que nós vamos trocar para o inglês aí, acho que para todo mundo entender, inclusive o professor. Então tá, obrigado Nicolai pela apresentação.
Right, thank you, Lucas. Professor Jean-Marc Vincent comes from the University of Grenoble-Alpes, France. He's a very old acquaintance of UFRGS. I think he's come here every year since 2002 or so. So it's by far not the first time that he gives us a speech. He's going to talk about reproducible research on computer science, a field which has been his main study for the last decade, maybe, perhaps. And, well, without further ado, Jean-Marc, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here. And I thanks a lot the invitation from Lucas, Nicolas, and others, and Philippe also, Navo. Because it's a long time I've been here. We get pandemia, and you get Bolsonaro. And so the difficulty of building projects with Brazil was harder. It was the end of the LICIA joint team between Grenoble and Porto Alegre. And we have no opportunities to come here and discuss with students and discuss with colleagues here. Some of your colleagues leave also the INF department, so it was harder. So my name is Jean-Marc Vincent. I'm associate professor in the University of Grenoble, this one, a very nice city where you can do skiing and hiking and so on. My team is part of CNRS and INRIA, so the two institutes in France in computer science and sciences. My lab is Laboratoire d'Informatique de Grenoble. So you have a big lab, about, I would say the building is about half a thousand of people working on computer science and applied math. And I'm also involved in Société Informatique de France, which is the equivalent of SBC in Brazil. And I am in charge of a part about education, computer science education. So we can have a discussion also on this topic next. I did also this speech in other situations. What I realized, and Lucas told me I have exactly the same title 5 years ago. So my slide should be different. And it should be, I don't remember my old slides. My slide should be different, but the audience is different, so that's nice. And it's part of a course that we are doing for doctorates and also for master students that is called SMPE, Scientific Methodology and Performance Evaluation for Computer Scientists. So it's about 36 hours of full course and activities around. And it's just, I extracted from the course one small part, and so I will present that. So you will find, these are the links to the course. It's on GitHub, so you can access all things. And we have a huge program. So it starts from a philosophy of computer science and up to design of experiments, the way to manage data, to store data, and for techniques for managing data. So there are many, many points here. And I will not detail this point, I just focus on reproducibility here. Okay. So that's the point now. When you look at science, you will have many exchanges between people saying, okay, can I get your data? Oh, yes, perhaps. Finally not, because I'm not sure these are good data and so on. So how did you get these results? No idea, I lost my working. So, oh, you feel it like real life? Okay, that's nice. How did he do that? What do peer review my paper? what to peer review my paper, etc., etc. Sure, as long as I don't have to read it. So the process of reviewing also is a very hard process. Lucas told us some experiments today. So these are very, very important things that you have that arise more and more in computer science and in science. That is how we can trust what is done in articles, in results from science. So that's the point. So in France, we decided to have a very big plan about reproducibility, and we have a Plan National for Open Science. So that is, now we have to evaluate projects depending on these criteria. So you have CNRS, INRIA, other institutes, also in Europe. In European projects, we begin to have such ideas. And we have also links between, and I think pandemic was one point. How could we trust people that are assessing some results about pandemic? Perhaps you could use hydroxychloroquine, for example. So, but what about the experiments? They cannot reproduce them. How could we trust in science? So the problem is with societal responsibility. What should we stand to say? Okay, we have the other problem where I think which is more critical than pandemic is climate. We measure things, scientists say things, and people don't trust them. So there is a huge problem there. Okay, so we have, these are the different criteria about what we are doing in open science, open access to the things, data, codes, etc. Open data, so you have some criteria, then FAIR is one of you have a website explaining that. Open source. So now we should have open source development codes, etc. Open methodology, and I will speak about that here. That is reproducible research. Someone that take your article could run again what you have done. Open science infrastructures, that is, you can have all the support for executing and looking at what you have done. Open peer review. So this is also a new question. Usually people don't say you have anonymous reviews. But anonymous reviews is not so fair. Because for many reasons, people could say, oh, I don't want this paper published. For other reasons, bad reasons, I would say. So perhaps it's better to have open peer reviews, people saying what they think about the paper. And so it's a discussion, a real scientific discussion, and also open educational resources. Okay, some figures. So there is a very important paper in Nature that where scientists say, okay, we are not able to reproduce what we have done. So the first question is, have you failed to reproduce an experiment? So in these domains, you have about, for example, in chemistry, 80% of searchers say they couldn't reproduce the experiment of someone else. But there are about 70% or 60% that says, I cannot reproduce my own experiments. So it's quite incredible. In engineering, here, physics and engineering, we are about 50%. So every searcher has been, at some moment, find something that is not reproducible, even if he built things. And I think they do the research with a fair way, etc., take notes, and but it's impossible. The second statistics are about, did you try to reproduce a result and publish the reproduction of the result? And successful reproduction, 24%. And it was published. And some unpublished, you have 10% that people reproduce the results but could not publish this work. If you take, I don't know, perhaps you are in a master or in a PhD, if you take the previous master thesis in your team, and your advisor say, okay, you just run again the result from the previous masters, and then you will build your own prototype. So you have to do that. It takes a lot of time, and you cannot publish. So it's perhaps we should have something that consider this work as very important, just to get some support for that. So what are the origins of that? You have many origins and social causes for this situation. The first one is the problem of money and frauds due to the pressure of companies that want to get the results. They get funding for the results. Think about cigarettes, for example. You have many fundings for cigarettes studies and the impact on health. So you cannot say it's very dangerous. In some situations, we observe some dangers, but the result is not nice. So you are not, we do usually not propose to reproduce results with our students. So for advisors, we say it will take a long time, but it will not be efficient for the master. So we are not incentive for that. Last point is it's impossible. I don't know how many papers you review per year. For me, it's impossible to just test all of these papers. So I have a big problem. So here, peer review does not scale. We have about 1 million of papers in computer science per year. How could we do the job just for peer reviewing? So when you discuss and you say, okay, some of referees just wrote 2 sentences a paragraph, it's because of the heaviness of that. So that begin to have some new practices on that, so on fair data, so accessibility of data at several steps of the research. Perhaps you cannot test the prototype, but you can have access of raw data, so you can just check something, etc. So we have parts of the software, etc. And so you have several plans of reproducibility, reproducibility badges. That is, when you evaluate paper, you think about the reproducibility criteria. Not saying it's bad or good, but put some information about what is given by the authors. And these are the social causes. And methodological causes, you have many biases. And typically in artificial intelligence now, you have many biases about hypotheses, so what is called apophenia. That is, okay, take your data, just shake them. At some moment, something will appear. Then you say, okay, I observe that. So my hypothesis for working was just to prove that. It's completely crazy, because you did use something without building something to observe. So if you are in a good scientific methodology, you should formulate an hypothesis, build an experiment in order to validate or invalidate the hypothesis, and then make the test, the design of experiment, and get the result. And in many situations, people are putting the hypothesis at the end and go back and rewrite the paper, just considering the hypothesis as true. So that's a very bad thing, bad designs also. So you have also selective reporting, so you have many data. Okay, these data are not nice, so I get rid of the data. So you ignore some parts of your experiments, of your data, and then you say you can get to the conclusion. There are very nice mistakes there. And also the last one is when you give the paper, and I did that also before, you just say, okay, I observed this very nice picture, these curves, and I don't speak about the data that are behind, and you cannot access the data that are behind. So I just give the end and not the rest. So ignoring information that is in the paper. So you have many effects on that. So here I just give you some examples in other sciences. So for biology, for medicines, etc., they begin to have, for all the papers, you should follow a single standardized protocol to evaluate. So this is given by the community. When you do things, you should do like this. That's all. So you have standardization of things. So that's quite nice. In psychology, nutrition, etc. So these are examples from that Arnaud studied before. A good way to do things is what is called pre-registration. Before doing the experimentation, you should note somewhere what you should observe. So we did that also in geography with my colleagues. We say, okay, he told me that. Okay, we have a question and we want to answer the question. We put the question, we put it in an envelope, we close it, perhaps we send it to somewhere else. And then at the end of the study, we open the envelope and check if we did what we say we have to do. So that's pre-registration. In other domains where you have, for example, computational fluid dynamics, I will show you some examples. Parallel computing. Some of you perhaps are in parallel computing. So to execute several times the same code, you get different results because of concurrence, because of the parallelism in itself, asynchrony, etc. So you have here, it's quite complex. And if you are in artificial intelligence, most of the problems you have are combined inside artificial intelligence. So what is what you have done? So that's for the author, for the searcher. He gets some data, he proposes an hypothesis, then he goes up to analyze this hypothesis, and there is a loop of research. Here, formulating hypothesis and then turning around inside that, just at the end to get some results. Next step, the reader. You get the publication. But the publication, look at all of these, the complexity of that. So it's just the top part of an iceberg. Don't have more. Wow. I should stop. So in that case, how could we get information from the paper to the whole process that is here? That's the point. The first step is to be aware of that. That is, you know that there is a problem. That is the first step. Not to solve it, but you know that there is a problem. So you should know that. And then what can we do with all of these? The first point is, so I think my previous talk was about that, is notebook workflows and the way of writing things and having this loop and get a trace of this loop. So how did we do the computations? So we have many things. We have notebooks. Perhaps you know org mode. If you know, you should go Lucas. They will explain you. RStudio, for example, Jupyter notebooks, and so on. And you have also workflows that you can use just to explain what you have done. You have the second point is to have software environments. So in that case, I think I didn't speak about that last time because it's we studied that with Arnaud. So we have to describe exactly what we have done in from a computer point of view. What is the architecture? What are the software? What are the operating system? And how we could reproduce things there. This is the second point, and the last one is about you have many things, and you have to keep them for eternity somewhere. So that if someone in 10 years wants to reproduce your results, because they are of interest, you should do that. So, and in that case, you have many situations. You have Git and GitHub techniques. You have Jupyter, AL, software editors. You have many tools that allows to get this information remaining in the domain. Okay, So first point, so I should be very quick. First point about taking notes and documenting. So I will detail the three areas there. So this is a quite classical thought. It's a frustration because as an author, you will be frustrated because you get different results running the experiment different times. So that's the first point. And also what I said about the method proposed last year, oh yes, this also is quite nice for master students. I have many times I would observe that. My student comes and say, okay, I get this result. Yes, but what was the parameter for granularity in your parallel algorithm? Wow, I don't remember. How many processors did you use? Oh, well, yeah, but I just look at the speed up. So, okay. This one is also quite nice. You want to publish a paper. At some moment, the referee says, the picture there, the figure number 3, 4, I don't like it. Could you run the experiment again just to get the same figure? What code how did I do that? So you have these kind of thoughts when you are an author and you try to have something efficient. As a reviewer, you say, okay, I observe things. Can I trust? I don't have confidence intervals, for example. The most simplest thing when you are doing experiments. So you ask in the referee, could you put the confidence intervals on your curves? Happens. The author is also frustrated. So the significance, etc. So after that, as a reviewer, you can have some doubts about the result itself. I'm sure they get rid of some points. Are there outliers in the experiments? And so on. So the idea is to do that, to build what is called a computational document. That is an article, is written, and this is what should be the result. Typical. So it's a very simple one. So what you have done is, before, in Jupyter, for example, you have the document here. And in this document, you have parts that are marked down about comments. So you say exactly what you are doing, what is the comments, and what could be the conclusions, for example, for an experiment. Then you have some code, and you mix the code and the text. And then you put the results. I don't remember, Lucas, if you just wrote a paper that was completely reproducible, or it was the previous Luca Stanisic that did that. Yeah, so it's a huge effort to just put your article there, run the code, and get the result. So that's a good way to do things. And so the export will give you that. So this is a paper you could publish, but this is an accompanying document that you could provide with your article. So that's the point. So people could follow what you have done. Here are the choices about the code, about the libraries, about etc. that don't have to appear here. Here you just put an extract of codes. You don't export all the codes, just put the significant parts of code. So that's the idea. Okay, and you have many environments, Jupyter, Org Mode, RStudio to do that. Okay, so this is for master students. I don't know if you are in master, but perhaps also with with PhD student. The thing is, when you want to do science, you should take notes, and always take notes. And you should have either what I call a notebook a laboratory notebook, that is a notebook in which you can report all your experiments. You can put the two objectives in the same document, and then take notes, take notes, take notes. So that is one important point. And you can build what are called a computational document at the end. But if you look at a computational document and an article, there is a small problem. The problem is the following. You have first of all case, it's the beginning, it's nice. Then I put more things, I have more table, and I put more and more, and so it's huge. And what happens here, it's a linear vision of things. And in fact, in this document, you have parts that are in relation inside. So the idea is to say, okay, I cannot do, I think I have one more. I cannot do things. So what I could do is just to try to split in some small parts, lose the linearity of the document, and say when I want to execute a computational document, I should have a graph, a dependency graph, and then compute things. But doing that, I will lose something. And so the idea is to use workflows. That is, we use techniques that are very common in science, where you put blocks, actions, etc. And so you organize your paper, your work, like that, like a big workflow with reusability of things. That is, at some moment you use this code, and so you can reuse exactly what you have done. So the pro is usually it's a clear high-level view, so you have a largest vision of what you have done. You have the composition of things given by the workflow, but you lose the interaction with the conclusions and the hypothesis you have to formulate at some point, what you get in your computational document at the beginning. So you have to think about the workflow, and you should accompany, you should add some information about what you are doing inside the workflow. What are the questions? And you have many workflows that are available. So these are very hard to use, but for people in computer science, I suggest use a make. It's a good language. Old one, serious. So you use make, and you just identify the targets and so on, and so you can do things. And you have the dependencies that is inside make. It's part of the language. So in that case, you can do work. Second point is about controlling the software environment. So that's a hard problem. I have a software, I send my software to my colleague. So I got 3.14, etc. And the others say, no, I got segfault. Okay, how can we do that? And so I have to upgrade my computer. So many other things break. I have to install things. So it's a very, very big, complex problem. So when I try the code, I have to install, and it doesn't work, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay, so you can say, okay, I put it on GitHub. So it's available, and you can use it. 3 points here. If you don't give the way to install your software, you will not succeed. People take codes from GitHub, and it never works. You should have an installation manual and things, information about that. The second point, you can install it, but you have to run it. If you don't put the running rules and how to use it, you fail. You get the software, you can run it, but the environment could be different. So you can get other results. So you have also to give information about the software environment to use when you are running your code. So even if it's nice to have codes on GitHub for experiments, it doesn't ensure that you will reproduce the same results. So you have some, these are typical horror studies. Perhaps it's your, Lucas, it was your example there? We use a matplotlib to draw curves, and 6 months later we get this picture. So it was just x squared, x cubed, x. What happens? So the color changed. And at some moment, matplotlib said, okay, we should have colors that are colorblind friendly. So they changed the colors. So if in your paper you say, following the blue curve, that's bad. So that is a simple example where the changing a library, a very common library, will affect your results. The second one is about, so this is an example about volume of brain, something like that. It was published in, if I remember well, in +1. And they say, okay, from one version to another, we have completely different values on volume of neurons that are considered in some application, etc. So the operating system plays a role inside the computation. So in that case, you have computations that are numerical computations. So typically it's a problem of stability using real numbers and so on. The other one is about, you have the same computer, you have the same operating system, but you use, so like, I don't know if you can, no, it's not so visible here. You use a compiler, for example, GCC, and you get average mass of a halo of galaxies, something like that. You have some standard errors, you have some time to compute, etc. And you will get some coherent results, okay, approximately the same, with different options for compilation. Okay, that's nice. Now you change the compilers. Change the compilers, you get completely different results. And you have orders of magnitude here, multiplied by 10. How could you trust now the results? And just when you have a high optimization in this one, but how could you predict that you should use this optimization to produce a good result? So that's a problem. And you have also the same with another compiler here. So in fact, what we have, it looks like science of nature. That is, we have to measure things in some system, an ecological system with so many parameters that it's like the science of nature. And so we have to fix things. So here is just an example about matplotlib. If you look at matplotlib, these are the dependencies of libraries. So imagine you change just one point somewhere, and all things should be different, could be different. And if you look at the graph, of dependency graph of matplotlib, here you have the Python dependency, here you have the real dependencies, and you have also here fake dependencies, that is, they say they depend from that, but not. Okay, so how could we capture all of these things? There are many, many techniques. The ugly one is reproducibility. Let's say you just say reproduce my thing, and so you run, and it takes many things. You don't know how it is organized, and you have a package there, and you can run but you don't understand what has been done. You don't understand how you can manage such things. The good ones are geeks or nicks. So I'm not a specialist of that. Lucas, I don't know, you use that a little bit. Lucas also, you use that? Perhaps you can give a course on that, because it's a very impressive technique just to get the trace of what happens in your system when you are looking at libraries and the state of the system in fact. So geeks and nicks. And you have also some bad, but it could be used. It's containers, so you have it's lightweight, so you can capture things, good isolation, easy to use. And you can use, for example, Docker, and you can take an image of an operating system, take an image of the design of experiments you have, and run it in a virtual machine so that you can rerun the object. So you can also share things via that. But if you put inside some apt-get, install something, etc., so you can break things. So you should be very careful of that. It's not so easy to use. Include what are the libraries you want to include inside. So that's also a point. Okay. And so my opinion is we should learn here from geeks and nicks. I didn't learn. I know what the ideas, but I didn't use it now. And my students should use it. So that's a good way for me to learn that. And the last point is about archive. I think I have time.
We have about 8 minutes.
Okay, I will try to finish that.
We have a class after.
Oh,
in the same room.
In the same room. Okay. So the last point is about the storage of information and keeping a trace for this information. So I plan to just put you links and show links, but here you go to FAIR, which are criteria for having information that you could find it, so you have a good metadata so that you can get the information. Accessibility, you can use in a standard format, so interoperable and reusable things. So the idea is open as much as possible and close as much as necessary. So you have a compromise between the two. You can manage things inside, so it's a good way to see things. Then also you have something which is nice, and I think now in Brazil or in France, everyone is using Git. It's using control and version control, etc. So it's very efficient. It's very efficient. You can reproduce things in some sense. You can roll back. You can have, but it's not really reproducible because you cannot share. You cannot store data. So if you have a terabytes of logs, you cannot use a Git to do that. So you should find other things like Git Annex, for example, or other tools. And it's very difficult to have a freeze version and just to focus on one point inside your development of research. So next point, I think, is more to see things in a larger time. That is, now you are publishing a paper, you are in a master, but think that someone will use your results because you are very clever, it's intelligent, your work, and so very nice as a PhD, and in 10 years you want to access to that. How could you guarantee that all your work is accessible in 10 years? Not just the paper, because the editors just get the paper, but the work you have done, the notebooks, etc. So there is a problem just storing and having that. So here is about, if you refer in a paper to an URL, you have about 4 years on average. So you have 50% of the references that are not valid. If you look at references to websites, it's about 2.2 years. So they do the experiment on some conferences. So the problem of keeping trace of things that happens with you is a very important problem. And of course here, you have also for codes, I think in Brazil you use Google Code.
What doesn't exist anymore? I think we are mostly using GitHub or something like that.
Okay, so some students use Google Code, and it closed. What are you doing with the code that was on Google Code? So that's so the problem here is duplication of things and having archives for that. So you have for the article we use HAL. So it's in Europe we use that archive.org. So these are good ways to store the different versions of your articles. For data, Figshare, Zenodo, and some others. But we don't know exactly how it could be supported for a long time. So the question is open, and there are communities behind. The fact that you have a community behind is perhaps better than just a company. And you have also an experiment in an experimental environment software heritage in France, led by INRIA, just to keep all the softwares that have been developed from the beginning. So they get trace and archive all things that have been developed. So there are 3 minutes. Okay. So there is a manifesto you should read as an advisor of students that has been developed by Lorena Barba Group, FAIR, and others. And these are what we should do as assistants, advisors, assistant of research, etc. And you have also other things like software carpentry, Turing ways. I don't speak about that. And I will finish with a few points. There is an initiative from ACM some years ago just to put badges on papers. If the artifact is accessible, if the artifact is reusable, if the artifact is reproducible, if the artifact could be replicated, etc. So several levels of usability of the artifact that is given by the article. And so there are some badges. So in my opinion, the badges are very important to think when you are publishing a paper with some results from a code. What could be the badges you expect? Just think about that. Think about what is expected in my paper. And there is a very nice conference from Joël Pinault at NIPS 18. And you have about reproducibility and what we can do. And she's in neurosciences and artificial intelligence. So it's a very interesting topic. And so you have to look at all of these things, think about all of them. And I will finish. So here you have some other papers because I think I just have 2 minutes, and I will finish by some things. And I'm convinced we have to do that. First point, we should redo things. It should be part of our work. Redo what other students have done, students or searchers, just to be confident and understand what was the work of this person. So that's the first point. The second point is we have to slow down the research. That is, H-index and the competition for papers perhaps now is not productive. So we have many papers. Many of them are difficult to reproduce. But perhaps we have to say, okay, slow down a little bit, having a higher quality for papers, and the science will be better. That's a point. And just I want to say that some universities in Europe are getting rid of H-indexes and others, saying, okay, we just have an evaluation of searchers on their capacity to do research. So it's important to have groups that could evaluate things, but with a higher level of view, not figures. So it should be outside the vision of politicians that say, okay, I have to rank things, but it's not ranking. Someone in a team that is able to reproduce the results of the others, precious. It's very precious. Someone that could just break the experiment of others is precious. But he will not publish. But it's important in the team. So the idea is just to take in all of these tasks in consideration in the evaluation of searchers. And to finish, so I just put here the MOOC from Arnaud, my colleague, Reproducible Research, Methodological Principles for Transparent Science. So you have an access, it's open, so you can just go and do the MOOC. It's easy. And there is a new edition that should be now in few weeks about managing data, software environment control, and so on. More technical, more close to computer science, I think. So in my opinion, also change the norm, make the practice of publication different, probably. May be more incentive, that is, say to the students that if you have reproducible results, is much better than having just one figure, one nice curve, and so on. And so the last point is about, in the future, we should consider that people will read our work, so we should have literate experimentation, that is, rerun things, etc. Use, reuse, and if your code is good, I'm still using some codes of numerical codes I wrote in the 80s. And they are still working and still efficient. It's just C with very few libraries, but it's computation, it's okay. And also how to share experiments also is a point, and we have to discuss about how to share platforms. For example, we have a grid in France. How could we share a grid with Brazil and share the experiments on both grids and so on? Okay, I think I'm over. I think just in time.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so let's thank Jean-Marc. Thank you. I think we have some time for questions. If you have any questions for Jean-Marc. Yeah, go ahead.
Congrats for your presentation. It was very inspiring. Where can we find more of your work? Is there a personal web page, web page of the university?
So if you want to have information about all of these works, we have the course we have in with Arnaud on the website of, I don't know if I can find it. It was the first one. No, I cannot. Okay, on this web page here, you will find, you will get the link because I gave the slides to Lucas. You will get the whole course and all the work we have done about reproducibility, computer science, and so on. There are much more because I'm more involved in the parts of statistics and design of experiments, and you can find information there. I don't know if you have, Lucas, you have a lab page or no, you didn't do that? Okay. You have some students that have a lab page in our group. Lucas Stanisic was one. And you have all the details for experiments there. So we can give examples of that. I don't know if I answer your question, but yeah.
Okay, any other question? I can provide one question. Actually, it's about the reward of doing all of this work. I mean, in the community, usually today you send a paper, right? If you make the effort to make all the reproducibility and create the companion, usually the conferences and the reviewers, they just don't get the companion to reproduce. So what do you think that should be done in the community level to, I mean, instigate reviewing, be more specific towards the companion, I mean, to make the reviewers actually look to the companion when doing the review process?
A typical thing you can do in the conferences is just saying, is the artifact given? Is the artifact evaluated by the author? So you can have access to some evaluation of the artifact. So you have just the reviewer just check things. But doing that, you focus the attention on the availability of
changing the submission process, so
yes.
the author can put a URL for the companion, for
yeah.
that would be sufficient to provide the attention
for the moment.
For the moment.
And then what I realize is people love badges. So you get something. It's completely free. You don't get, but it's just, yes, I get the red badge or the green one.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple motivation, free motivation. And I think searchers also are some sensitivity for that. They are very happy to get some badge. And if I have a student that comes and say, okay, I have a replicable experiment, so wow. They could be proud of that. To be proud is, I think, a good engine for progression. It is not necessary to get some funding or something like that, but yes, getting a badge. So nowadays we have just best paper award, usually in conference, and the best paper award is about the importance of the result that is in the paper. So it's in a large environment and just think about that. And if we have a reward on several type of activity, I think it could be nice. And some conferences that just I cited before use that just to say to highlight some works that are reproducible in the conference. So I think it's a way to do things. So just incentive, not constraints and so on that are not successful usually.
Okay, please go on. Yeah, we have time. It's actually good.
A more expanded question. I think we also have an increasing responsibility as computer scientists because we increasingly provide tools which should be reproducible, they are deterministic, to other scientists. I don't know, people from social sciences, for instance, with whom I work quite a lot this time, they use software, they use artificial intelligence to extract correlations among huge structured data sets. And in many cases, they rely blindly on this software that we provide. I don't know, R showed me that there is a correlation between this and that. And so scientists from other fields, I think there is a real danger that increasingly, either because they don't understand really scientific methods that we provide, either because in some cases they don't want to understand. I think we have a responsibility to all those users of our tools to improve, to be very clear that not everything that an algorithm provides is exact. So the question is, how can we work with colleagues from other fields to also transmit?
I got it. First point, we are a science in computer science, was a little bit more analytic at the beginning, and we are going to the science of nature. But science of nature, they are very, very prudent. They take into account details and cautions on the experimental design. Of course, experimental design in computer science appears, I think, 20 years ago, the theory of design of experiment. But in biology, in physics, they have already a strong knowledge about what is reproducibility. And in fact, what we have done is we take the concepts from other sciences and we put them inside computer science. So in my opinion, for people that are in biology using artificial intelligence and so on, for them, it's not a problem. Reproducibility is part of their job. And so they will capture things, and we just have to explain that a computer is like a biological system. And they have the methods. They have lab books. If you look at the lab books in a research center in biology, it's incredible. You have many, many information and so on. And they trace and they have tools to do that. So for me, the idea is for some sciences, it will be okay, very easy. Some others, perhaps it's more complex. I don't know. We have to check that. So now I want just to say here, Conrad is a physicist. And Christophe is a biologist. So the MOOC have been done by a physicist, a biologist, and a computer scientist. And it was really for the extension to all the sciences. So that is the first step to answer your question. Of course, it's a huge problem because people are using our tools and we don't put the manual for reproducibility with our tools. I agree with you. We should do that, and in artificial intelligence, it's very important. But I'm not sure we have to convince them that reproducibility is important. Yeah, they already know.
I think those things you mentioned, I agree with you. They already know. But I'm thinking about economics or
is economic a science? I don't know. No, it's a complete joke.
Psychology. Or
yes, it's a joke. I agree with you, but they already uses tools from statistics and others, and they have the same problem with look at papers about p-value, for example. Yeah. But I'm not sure. But in psychology, for example, they are very they have difficulties because of reproducibility, and they know the problem. In medicines too. So I think for me, psychology, medicine, it's not a problem to say them, okay, you have a tool, but okay, it is not reproducible at any time. And they could understand, I think. I suppose that my colleagues in other sciences are clever and could understand things. So even in computer science thing, I am very optimistic, but I believe that.
Okay, so let's thank again our speakers. Let's close the session and make the transmission here. And we are offline.
So I will be next week in August.